Hello and welcome back to the LFC transfer room. Today I am joined by the Athletics Newcastle United correspondent, Chris Waugh. How are you doing today, Chris?
Yes, I'm very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks. We're recording this straight after the Champions League draw shambles, so it's been a busy afternoon for me. But we're here to talk about the Liverpool vs Newcastle United game, so let's get into it. Just to start off, really, how has Newcastle's season been so far? Obviously, the takeover happened, Steve Bruce got sacked, and now Eddie Howe's coming in as trying to really save you from a bit of a relegation battle. But how has it been so far, especially with the takeover?
It's been characteristically chaotic, I think is probably the best way of describing it. On the pitch, for large parts, they've been shambolic. They didn't win for the first 14 matches. It took till the 15th game against Burnley for them to finally get a victory. That's why they're in such a difficult position. Steve Bruce was eventually dismissed following the takeover, but that didn't happen initially. Mike Ashley expected the takeover to go through in the summer. That restricted Newcastle's transfer business. They have an aging squad. They have serious deficiencies in an unbalanced squad. And that is why they're in such a poor position. And it really is. There's the sort of strange situation at Newcastle now, where on the one hand, they're the quote-unquote richest club in the world, and it seems that it's an optimistic future, and everything off the field, because Mike Ashley is gone among supporters, is sort of relentlessly optimistic after 14 years of being relentlessly pessimistic. And yet the reality is they're in a serious relegation battle. It is going to take something special for them to survive. No team has ever failed to win any of their opening 14 games and survived before. And Eddie Howe is trying to install a new style of play, which Newcastle fans seem to be excited about and embrace. But does he actually have the players to do that? It's going to take him time for that really to work. And unfortunately, he just does not have time. And so that's where Newcastle are at the moment. There's this idea that in the long term, things are going to be so much more exciting and positive. But actually, in the short term, the reality bites hard, and Newcastle are in a significant relegation battle.
Yeah, I mean, going on to Eddie Howe, what has he changed? Obviously, Steve Bruce sort of tried to get the Rafa Benitez style from when he took over, which, the fans didn't really like, very negative football. As Eddie Howe come in and sort of change the style of play, and obviously, he conceded forward against Leicester. Is it just, obviously you said that he hasn't got the players, but can you see a noticeable difference from when he took over from Steve Bruce?
You can see a noticeable difference, and I think that externally, a lot of people maybe of other clubs don't necessarily understand why there was so much negativity around Steve Bruce and the team. It's not just because he set his team up negatively all the time. It's mainly because there didn't seem to be a clear long-term plan. There didn't seem to be a strategy as to how he wanted to play. He would flitter between one system, one formation or another. Newcastle would be front foot, and then the next game they'd sit off. And it just seemed to be it was a make do and see what would work for a certain amount of time, not because it was a philosophy he necessarily believed in, but because it would work in the short term. Then it would expire in terms of how it was working and eventually change. Whereas Eddie Howe's come in and he's talked about his own footballing philosophy. He's tried to make Newcastle a lot more front foot. They actually had more of the ball against Leicester on Saturday, which very few matches, certainly before he arrived this season, did Newcastle dominate possession. He's tried to push them higher up the pitch as a higher defensive line. They have shifted to a back four. And the fullbacks are trying to get more into the game, and it's a more progressive midfield. So he has Joe Willock and John Joe Shelby in there rather than a defensive midfield, and he's also trying to bring Joe Linton and more out of him. So really, it's about making Newcastle more progressive, trying to get them to play out from the back more, which has brought problems of its own, as we saw against Leicester. For the first goal Newcastle conceded came about from their own mistakes. Jamal Lascelles trying to play it out from the back. Poor ball to John Joe Shelby, then Lascelles gives away what looked like a soft penalty, but equally Newcastle had invited the situation onto themselves. And so really, it's almost Eddie Howe trying to extract more from players who maybe aren't suited to doing that. And so he really needs a January transfer window to try and basically make some surgery to the squad. But whether he can actually make the significant changes that really need to be made in a mid-season window, when Newcastle are in such a difficult position and a lot of clubs seemingly don't really want to deal with Newcastle, that is what is going to be very difficult to see.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think the defence is a massive issue going into this. I think he's had the most goals conceded in the Premier League this season with 34, while Liverpool obviously have the most scored with 45, so it's bottom against top. What I know this might sound like a stupid question, but what are Newcastle's weaknesses? Is it the defence, or is it really the whole pitch? Like, where are Liverpool going to find the most joy against Newcastle?
I mean, they have deficiencies all over the pitch, but definitely it is defensively. And that is, I suppose, the main concern when Howe came in is for all of what he was going to bring offensively, he has no real track record at Bournemouth of having sorted out a defence. Bournemouth in every single season in the Premier League conceded at least 60 goals, and Newcastle are on course to concede more than 2 a game at the moment. They have the second worst goal difference in the Premier League. It's essentially means they've got a point less. And so if certainly in behind Newcastle's fullbacks or wing backs, depending on what system Howe does play, may shift to a back three going away to Liverpool. To exploit that space and behind the defence is what a lot of teams have done consistently this season, particularly when wingers play as wing backs, as has happened. Matt Ritchie's played at left wing back and Jacob Murphy has played at right wing back. And dragging centre backs out of position, they don't really have the pace to cope with that. They get caught in a high line. They try and play it out from the back. And so if Liverpool apply the same sort of high press, I mean, I watched Liverpool against Everton, and for the first 20 minutes, I think it's the most intense performance I've seen from any team in recent years in terms of how, if they play even a fraction like that against Newcastle's defence, first 20 minutes, then I fear Newcastle will be wiped out. That is where the main issue is. They also lack creativity going forward. They do have pace on the counter-attack, but really the issues are in Newcastle's defence. And if Liverpool score early, I just can't see a way back for Newcastle.
Yeah, and going on to that relegation battle, obviously, is a sitting 90th at the moment. I think it's only Norwich below yours. How are you going to avoid relegation? Is it really sort of he's just hoping to bring players in January? Because obviously, even though Eddie Howe is a good coach, it's going to take a miracle to really keep this set of players from being relegated next season, isn't it?
January will undoubtedly be huge to try and stop Newcastle going down. They do need strengthening across the field. They do need really, ideally, half a dozen signings, but at least 3 or 4 quality players who will go straight into the first 11. So that will play a crucial role. But really, Howe is going to have to try and extract more from the players he has as well. And he recognises that because he knows that committing sort of trying to really change the entire squad in the mid-season is just not realistic and in normal times, never mind the situation Newcastle find themselves in. And so they just have to try and be better than 3 teams. It's become wearisome in Newcastle because over the last few years, 17th place is, for the previous owner was seen as a success. And unfortunately, it's sort of flipped now. And in this season, it would be, given the situation they're in now. And it's to try and stay in the Premier League so then they can try and change a lot more of the squad next summer and really think about pushing higher up the table. And so extracting more from the players he has, but also being astute in January, be they loan signings or be they sign some players from abroad who they think can actually hit the ground running. They can't afford for players to come in and take time to transition in the Premier League. They have to make an impact immediately, and that's what Newcastle are going to have to bank on. Yeah,
and looking ahead of the game against Liverpool on Thursday, what Eddie Howe's plan going to be? Obviously, this season we have seen a bit of both against Liverpool. We've seen teams sit back. We've seen teams try and play on from front. But every it seems like every way you approach Liverpool, you're just going to get outplayed. What's Eddie Howe going to do? Is he going to sit back defensively, or is he going to try and play on the counter attack a bit more?
I think most Newcastle fans, certainly after the 4-0 on Sunday against Leicester, have basically written this game off. I don't think Howe will take the same approach. 4-0 probably did flatter Leicester to a certain degree. I don't think it was a 4-0 match in that sense, but equally Newcastle contributed to their own downfall. And once they fell behind, were almost too open. And if they do that against Liverpool, it could be, you fear to think what the scoreline should be. So I think Howe will make a few changes. He hasn't yet started the likes of Isaac Hayden, who's a defensive midfielder, in recent matches since he's come in. He switched to a back 4. I can see him potentially switching to a back 5 at Anfield to try and just contain a little bit more and show Newcastle up a little bit more. But I don't think it'll be the just sit behind the ball and not try and impose yourself on matches as Newcastle have been in recent years when they've gone to places like Anfield. I do think he will at least try and offensively influence the match. I think they'll see possession. I think they'll see territory, but there will be a plan probably on the counter-attack to try and get in behind Liverpool if possible, exploit Liverpool's own high back line. But really, it's how many opportunities are going to get to do that. And so I think regardless of how Eddie Howe goes into this match, it looks a tall order for Newcastle to even think about getting anything. Really, most Newcastle fans look at this as sort of damage limitation and try not to get hammered. The goal difference, which was gradually starting to get slightly healthier and catching the teams above them before the weekend, took a massive hammering against Leicester. They have Liverpool on Thursday night, they then have Man City on Sunday. What they don't want to do is to concede another 7 or 8 goals in the next 2 games and really find themselves level in terms of with Norwich for having such a bad goal difference.
Yeah, I mean, going into this, is there any way at all that Newcastle can win this game, or even, you know, get a point out of it? Or is that, you know, it's 99.9% not possible, basically?
I mean, Newcastle's record at Anfield in general is awful anyway. They just don't win when they go to Liverpool. I don't think it's not impossible. Newcastle have players, the likes of Callum Wilson, who scored out of nothing this season. Sam Maximan, if he fancies it, can conjure something out of nothing. Set pieces, Eddie Howe's worked hard on Newcastle trying a few routines that could nick something from one of those moments. But it's just you struggle to see how Newcastle aren't going to concede. They've only kept 1 clean sheet all season, which was against Burnley. They regularly concede a significant number of goals. And given Liverpool's record going forward, it just looks like a very, very tall order. And I think, although you would never say this, I'm sure Eddie Howe would look at this and think if Newcastle can get away with a 2-0 or a 3-1 defeat, that wouldn't be, in the context of the rest of the season, the worst thing ever. If they could get a point, that would be massive in terms of giving them extra confidence going into a very difficult period. But I think there's realism that really this game is as close to a write-off as you're going to get.
Yeah, and finally, what are your score predictions going into the game?
I don't want to be too negative, but I am fearful, but I don't want to be too negative. I think I'll go 3-1 Liverpool. I certainly can't see Newcastle keeping a clean sheet. I'm optimistic that they can potentially disrupt Liverpool and nick a goal somewhere. So I hope that they manage to keep it down to something like that. So yeah, I'm going to go 3-1 Liverpool, unfortunately.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us, Chris. Again, go and check out all of his articles on The Athletic. Yeah, if you have enjoyed, make sure you leave a like and subscribe. And thank you very much.